Technology supply firm Robert Bosch has announced that it is investing more than 400 million euros in expanding its chip-making facilities in Germany and Malaysia next year, in the face of a crippling shortfall of the vital component.
How does this speak to all of the imbalances we're seeing in the supply chain and the ability to move goods both by ocean and air right now? How long do you expect this imbalance to last?
Toyota is lowering its planned global output in November by up to 15% or 150,000 cars. That is because of a shortage of semiconductors and the power crunch in China. The Japanese automaker has already cut production for September and October by 40% as the resurgence of COVID-19 infections in Southeast Asia disrupts supply chains for auto parts. Toyota says it's maintaining its global production forecast for the year to March at 9 million vehicles despite the latest output cuts.
German technology and parts supplier Bosch is looking to boost supply by investing 400 million euros to expand chip manufacturing. But Bosch also uses chips in-house for products like Bosch Power Tools. A bit of good news for the EU, which aims to increase domestic supply chain resiliency over the next decade.
And it's not only Toyota that's aching under the chip shortage. Christy Platzen in Frankfurt. Europe's auto industry is feeling the pinch as well there, with September sales as low as they haven't been in over 20 years.
Yes, it's certainly not just Toyota that's being hit by this. Also, European car makers are dealing with very low inventories. They're having to slow down or even shut down production. And there are even reports of dealerships with empty lots and empty showrooms. So if we can look at some other numbers for a moment here, last September we saw a rise in new car sales. But this September's figures compared to those are down 23%. And expert analysis of this is pointing to, surprise, surprise, this chip shortage. The supply is just not there to meet the demand. And this is, of course, having a knock-on effect in the rest of the industry as well. We're seeing transporters, trains sitting idle. The car industry is such a major one here in Europe, and the unpredictability tied to this chip shortage is certainly not ideal.
Christy, we've been talking about this chip shortage for over a year now, certainly also caused by botched supply management on the car maker side. But where are these chips?
Yeah, Chris, there are so many factors going into this situation. I mean, for one thing, there's the coronavirus, of course. The countries where these chips are produced will have outbreaks from time to time, like we recently saw in Malaysia. That brings production to a standstill. There's also just a huge demand for these chips that wasn't there in recent decades. This is partly tied to increased demand for electric vehicles. Some electric vehicles need as much as 10 times the number of chips as a combustion engine vehicle. There's also demand when it comes to other electronics. Everything from a PlayStation to an electric toothbrush needs these chips as well. So some have said that the supply chains are essentially broken. There are some efforts to build more production facilities here in Europe, for example. But this is going to take time, and the end is really not anywhere in sight right now.
Christy Platzen in Frankfurt, thank you.
Thanks.
Now, Volkswagen, of course, has been among those that have been feeling the semiconductor crunch. Sales in September were down by almost a third for Volkswagen. But there's more that's causing a stir at Europe's biggest car maker. Its boss, Herbert Diess, has warned the company of grave consequences if it botches its shift to electric vehicles. The CEO is believed to have said at VW's advisory board that Acting too slowly could cost the company up to 30,000 jobs. Now, people in the room have been quoted saying he was setting out an absolute worst-case scenario, but it does point to concerns within the company that it's lagging behind its competitors. Mr. Dees has often made comparisons with U.S. electric car maker Tesla. Now, Elon Musk's firm is planning to run a slick operation at its new factory near Berlin. It wants to produce 500,000 cars a year with around 10,000 employees. Volkswagen eventually wants to be making around the same number of electric cars at its Wolfsburg factory, but requiring more than twice as many workers, 25,000. Earlier, I spoke to Christian Stadler of Warwick Business School and asked him how VW was to solve this conundrum.
Well, I'm not sure if it's entirely solvable, but there's a couple of points that I think that are at play here. First of all, Volkswagen is actually not such a bad position. The Dieselgate scandal was, in a way, a blessing in disguise because they started to go after e-vehicles faster than many of the other manufacturers. The second thing, the key thing in this whole context is to bring in the workers as well. There's a new technique where companies can open up their strategy development process, and coincidentally, I've just published a book on that. So you permit me a bit of promotion of that here. It essentially means that you involve people in decision making, and because they're involved, they have a better understanding of what needs to be done. It will speed up the process, exactly what Volkswagen tries to do at the moment.
Nevertheless, output at the company's main production hub in Wolfsburg is at an all-time low. And of course, people are concerned. Volkswagen boss Dees says the site needs to become more efficient, faster. How?
Well, that's precisely what I'm saying. It's a substantial shift, and that's really hard for organizations of any kind. If I look back a few years, 2012, Barclays had to shift to the digital. The retail business was struggling with that. So bringing everyone into the conversation helped them to make this shift. That would be my main suggestion, yeah? Not just try to direct from the boardroom, but actually involve people in this difficult transition, which will come with frictions, no doubt.
Because you do need fewer people to put together electric cars than cars that run on combustion engine. What do you think? How many jobs are on the line here?
I wouldn't sort of want to be pressed to put numbers on that, but I think in essence you are right that we are most likely looking at fewer numbers of employees being needed. The sort of solution could be if you produce substantially more vehicles. In other words, you become a larger company, but Volkswagen is already, depending on when exactly you look, the largest or the second largest producer of vehicles. So yes, I do think that the unfortunate truth is that probably there'll be fewer Volkswagen workers some point in the future.
Now, not too long ago, many were saying that the famously successful German automotive sector had somewhat missed the boat when it comes to electric mobility. Now, you said Volkswagen in itself has started shifting rather quickly. Where do you see the rest of the German brands?
Well, a little bit behind, not too bad overall. I think the bigger challenge actually for them is self-driving cars. That's further into the future, but it's sort of a really fundamental shift in the sense that it becomes much more of a software product, and all the manufacturers in Germany are also trying to ramp this up, but that's not really where their core expertise comes from. We'll need to see where this goes. I think that is the bigger challenge even in the longer run.
Christian Stadler of Warwick Business School, thank you.